What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr Wargames, and today I'm giving you an update to budget Traptrix. That's right, this deck is still around, do not sleep on it. It actually got some really cool support from Syac that a lot of people wouldn't even consider because they're just either TCG exclusives or they're cards that not a lot of people have talked about. So I'm going to show you them in this build. And if you want to see an update to the Vint profile, which is Vernisilf, Yugioh cards, Naturias and Traptrix, which is all from Rob, then let me know, hitting the video above 50 likes in the first 24 hours and I'll bring that for you as well. So with all of that out of the way, let's dive headfirst into this budget profile that can obviously compete. So the Traptrix lineup is pretty straightforward and simple on this one. Triple Mamelo, triple Mantis for your consistency cards. And then it's up to you if you want to play 2 or 3 Pudica. I've bounced back and forth between 2 and 3. And I've kind of settled on 2 at the moment. It may not stay like this, it may continue to change as well. But 2 is kind of working out okay for me. A card that I've got less of an issue having at 2, and that is of course Arachnacampa. This is the one that kind of restricts some of your plays, but the way you're playing this deck, and it's very, very control heavy, you don't really worry too much. It's such a good addition to the deck that really helps you trigger Sarah and get maximum value for it out turn 1, that it's kind of one of the ones that you have to play. I think 2 is more than enough. I feel 3 can get a little cloggy, even though you could technically normal summon 1, link it off into Sarah and then activate the other one. It's still not something that you really want to be doing. We've then got 2 Dioneer and then 1 Viscillo. Now again, the Viscillo is kind of questionable. You could arguably take this out. Again, because it technically acts as another Arachnacampa. So again, I'm not 100% set on it. It's just something that I keep chopping and changing and messing around with. Like the Dioneer, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2. Arachnacampa sets at 2, and then Viscillo is like maybe 1, maybe not. So if you want to be putting, spoiler, I don't put Ash Blossom in the deck. If you want to put like Ash Blossom, or you want to make more space for Dry Bird, there are flex spots so you can kind of adapt. So this is just to give you a structure, and then you can go, okay, I don't like having this in here, or when I'm testing it, it's actually really, really good. Then you've got the options. And then the brand new card that we're putting in this deck, and this card's nuts. How the heck this isn't, like, I expect this to be in near enough every Traptrix list, and that is Wannabe. Now, a lot of you are probably going to be like, what the hell is this card? Well, this card is, during the end phase, so either end phase, send this card from the hand or field to the graveyard, so 9 out of 10 you're going to be sending it from the hand. Excavate cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of your opponent's unused spell and trap zones. So, if I drop this during my end phase going first, I'm going to be able to excavate 5 cards. In doing so, you get to set 1 excavated trap to your field. Now notice how that doesn't say a normal trap, a counter trap, continuous trap. It just lets you set a trap card from the top 5. So you have more consistency, especially when you're going into the side deck, to get to your judgment to protect you. It's absolutely mental. You put the rest of the cards back to the deck as well. The only downside is that the trap you set off of this needs to go to the graveyard or sent to the graveyard during the next end phase. But the reason you're activating this is the trap card you're going to be pushing to get is going to be used during your opponent's turn in a way so that doesn't even happen. You place the rest on the bottom of the deck in any order. You can only use this effect once per turn. So literally, drop it during your turn, good. Drop it during your opponent's turn, go again. Like, especially when you look at a super heavy samurai matchup, and the only matchup that this would be bad against, which is obviously a matchup that Traptrix isn't the greatest against, is Labyrinths. A lot of decks aren't splashing 5 along the back row, and even against super heavy, they're probably only really going to be leaving 1 along their back row, so you're still going to be able to excavate 4, which is mental. There is a card later on in the deck that I do play specifically for this, and I'll explain the logic behind it when I get to it. And then of course triple parallel XEs. Because we are on a bit of a budget, but also because this actually helps with one of the new XYZs we put in the extra deck, we are going back to the Tantalizing Tune. So this one being able to discard a level 4 insect, plant, or normal trap card to draw 2 cards. Now it's the normal trap card you're going to want to be using more times than not, because that's when you're going to get the most advantage off of, preview, the new Balmet Sacred Sheep. So this is the one that you detach material from this card, target a normal trap in your graveyard, place it on the bottom there and draw 1 card. So technically, if you can get into this, alongside this, you're getting a draw 3 in the turn, and recycling the trap card you've just put to the graveyard. If that wasn't enough, it does have another nice effect that if a normal trap card is activated, except during the damage step, you get to detach material from an XYZ you control, and if you do, special on a level 4 monster from the hand. So again, it lets you kind of extend your plays even further, because when you're looking at stuff like what makes Traptrix decks so good is stuff like Holotea. Like, you're going to be able to activate that card and you're going to be able to trigger the shrub. The shrub can then extend even further. Like, it just keeps going and going. It's really kind of cool. And then the only other spell we play is the One Garden. So obviously if you've got them, you could play Prosperities, but I still quite like the synergy between this and the Sheep. So it really comes down to personal preference. On to the trap cards. You see we've got a nice fat stack of trap cards for this deck. So triple Hollow Tear, pretty standard this one. And then we've got 1 Nightmare, 1 Floodgate, 1 Terrifier, 1 Gravediggers, and 1 Bottomless. Like, these can be a range of whatever you want. I do quite consider putting Floodgate to 2 and Gravediggers to 2, just for those times when you do open this and you're still trying to play around the Biru, you don't get caught out. And then worst case scenario, if you do open up both Gravediggers, and you do get Nibiru, you can still just set both Gravediggers. And that's still going to be able to do like 4,000 damage to your opponent, which is crazy. We're still main decking evenly matched, like Go Second, normal trap card for either Hollow Tear or of course the Tantalizing Tune, so it gives you a bit of double synergy. I'm still playing the Shade Brigandine. A lot of people cut this, I understand it completely. Again, it comes down to personal preference. I just like the idea of, even if I don't see Hollow Tear, but I see like a Traptrix monster and this, I still get full combo off of Sarah, and then even when I do use this instead of Hollow Tear, it means that I can go for one of the Floodgates, I can go for the Bottomless. Like, if I'm ending my turn with access to like 2 or 3 of my trap hole cards, it's very difficult for my opponent to play through that unless they're main decking an evenly or pure back row hate. We've then, of course, for our hand trap is Infinite Impermanence. Again, the synergy it has with Sarah, the fact that you can also set this off of the Wannabe as well is really kind of cool, because then it just means that in your end phase, the only trap card you don't really want to see off of your Wannabe is probably Evenly Matched. And you do want to see Evenly Matched if you drop it during your opponent's end phase and you're going second, because then it's just a free search for an Evenly Matched. It's rare that your opponent's going to try and stop that Wannabe, because the Wannabe can't be ashed, because it sets the card rather than adds the card. It's going to be very tricky that they need to use up like an Omni Negate to deal with it, and that's where the next card comes into play. So because it can set you any trap card, I'm actually main decking Solemn Strike. Now the logic behind this is, if my opponent, let's say they go for a Super Heavy Samurai endboard, right? So on average, you're probably looking for a Regulus. They're not going to want to burn a Regulus, a 1 Negate Savage, or a Baron on the Wannabe. So if anything, they're going to have to use an Appaloosa Negate. And if they're like, all right, what's the worst thing that they can set? Like a Tantalizing, not expecting a strike. As soon as you set the strike, like as soon as you activate the card, if you see a strike and set that, they can't do anything. And then what that means is one of the first cards you play is completely protected. So one thing you could consider is something like Torrential Tribute, because then what you could do is, if you get the strike and set this, the issue that you then kind of come into the play is because this gets sent during the next end phase. So you need to kind of get your opponent in what I would call a snooker position. But the idea behind this is, if you see the Solemn Strike, you set the Solemn Strike, okay, you normal summon anything. Let's say you go for Mantis or Mamelo. They then try and use a negate. Then in response to that, you can flip the strike. They can then not negate the strike or anything further. So your first effect you've activated is protected, and you take out one of their negates for a 1-for-1. So you're paying 1,500 life points to get rid of them. Now, obviously, if they see this game 1, they probably will then stop the Wannabe. But I feel that Wannabe is one of them deceptive cards that it's like, oh, what's the worst that can happen? And then when you're dropping a strike or setting a strike off the back of it, you're protecting your plays going forward. So that was the logic behind this. And then even if I'm going first, like, still being able to go first and get a strike, whether it be naturally open it up or getting it off of the back of the Wannabe, is insane. And it's the only one that's better than a Judgment and a Warning, in the sense of, if I drop the Wannabe during my opponent's turn and have this along my back row to protect my plays. Whereas Judgment and Warning can't do that. It's a lot more trickier, whereas this one can negate effects and summons. It's where it becomes incredibly powerful. So it definitely is a 42 card deck. You've got flex spaces, so like if you're not a fan of the Phantom Knight Shade Brigandine, you can cut that completely. If you want to play double ups of some of these, you can do. There's a lot of variation, which I really, really like, but what I was aiming to do was keep this on a tidy budget, so that all those that have the Traptrix structure there and don't want to just bin it going into the new format can still compete. And with the new cards as well, they're all incredibly cheap. It's 2 supers. Wannabe, which is like £1 each, and you can probably get them for 40p on tier 0 game per copy. And then the 1 sheep, and this is like £1. I picked this up at locals for £1. This is very cheap and easy. Speaking of the extra deck, again, pretty straightforward on this one. So triple Sarah, 1 Calaria, I do play 2 of the Atlas. This is purely because I don't play Axis Code to keep it on a budget, and I don't play Zeus. So having this as a boss monster is actually really, really kind of cool. And the fact that it boosts all of your Traptrix kind of turns them into mini boss monsters. So like I said before, at the end of the day, Sarah becomes 18, Claria becomes 28, Atlas becomes 28 as well. So you've got a lot of power on the board to help you push through certain matchups. Not to mention as well, we've got the 2 Penigula, we've got the 1 Alamiris and the 1 Rafflesia. So Rafflesia becomes less of a boss monster, but your Ping and your Alamiris becomes 32 and 25. 35. So again, you're getting boss monsters on the board to help you deal, and you're not breaking the bank. Baguska for those ones when you need to stall and slow down the game, not stall for time to win, but if you're being hit by a floodgate and you can't play through it, you can go into a Baguska and really slow the game down. Redo, pretty straightforward and simple on this one. I still love the idea of Shade Brigadine into this guy, because then you're getting that non-target bounce and stealing from the top of your opponent's deck. So if you were to play Zeus, you can make this into an incredibly fat Zeus. Because we're not playing Zeus, we do have the 1 Exotong, the 1 Dweller, just purely because certain matchups right now going into the format, more so Super Heavy Samurai, if you turn off their graveyard, can be very tricky for them, because then it means their Soul Piercer can't be looped. And that can kind of cause them an issue, because ultimately in the combo, they loop Soul Piercer like 3 or 4 times, which is insanely powerful, and that's just where they get their consistency cards, and that's where they're getting all their searches to keep going. It can also be quite good in a Dark World matchup, which is, you know, a little bit rogue, but still quite funny, and you never know what a balance might do to a deck like this, or just generally the format. And then the last card is, of course, the Sacred Shrub. Now, I've already talked about this one. It can use multiple level 4s. It doesn't need to be specifically 2. But if you are making it with 2, you detach material from this card to target a normal trap card in the graveyard, place it on the bottom of the deck, and draw 1 card. Then if a normal trap card is activated except during the damage step, you get to detach a material from an XYZ you control. So it could be any XYZ you have. So let's say you've used all of your trap hole cards and Rafflesia is dead. You could technically detach a material from her. Yes, it means that she would then be open to being destroyed by card effects, but you can detach it from any XYZ is the example that I'm trying to make. And if you do, you get to special summon that level 4 monster from the hand. So that can then help you go into Atopus. Now, this just needs to include an insect or plant monster, which luckily Shrub is a plant monster. So in theory, if you have this XYZ and then another XYZ, you detach a material, you then bring that down, you've got 3 to go into the Atopus as well, and then you've got a boss monster on the board. So again, it's just a very cheap alternative card that I don't think a lot of people know exists or know we got in Syac. So it's definitely one that you can keep an eye out on, and definitely one you could be putting into the deck to help you, to give you a different angle. And I really like it. I think it's a cool option. I feel Wannabe is just next level involvement. Like, the card is absolutely nuts. And I really, really like it for this deck. Anyway, that is it for the profile. I hope this has given you a couple of ideas to upgrade your own build. Not much can be changed. Like if you're like, well, I've got all the money cards, what do I add? Ultimately, the only thing that's missing that's a bit of a money card is Zeus, in my opinion. So everything else can be adapted and utilized in different ways, but I feel Zeus is kind of there, and your next best alternative is an X-Ton Knight, which is just as good. It's just not as much of a boss monster. If you wanted to go full ham and put in even more money, another upgrade you could go for would be the Regulus engine, but Regulus is quite hyped right now and is very expensive. Anyway, that is it for the profile, so thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, guys, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.